Shalom, shalom, family, to the scattered 12 tribes across the globe. I greet you all in the name of our coming King, Yahusha, and the power of Almighty Yahuwah. I greet you all by the name of our coming King. Peace to you. So this is another installation of 10 minutes with the prophets. And if you're a Bible student or you study and read for yourself, you can recall one of the very last commandments the Messiah left us was we were to read the words of Daniel so we can recognize the end of days and be able to discern his second coming. And then the Apostle Peter in his second epistle, he also reminded us or encouraged us to restudy or revisit the words of the prophets, that our hope would not be diminished, that we would read the words of the prophets and we will be encouraged, because the prophets constantly reminded the Israelites the promises that the Messiah would come and restore them. Now, even though the Messiah didn't come when they wanted him to, or didn't restore the kingdom to Israel when they wanted him to, the prophets nonetheless reminds us of the coming promises to the nation of Israel. So today we want to be obedient, and we're going to continue with 10 minutes with the prophets. And the question on the table today is, Apostle Paul is known in the religious community as the apostle to the Gentiles. So if you grew up in churches, especially the Sunday churches like I did, at some point you've heard the phrase or a sermon that Apostle Paul was sent to the Gentiles, and he himself even dubbed himself the apostle to the Gentiles. So the question on the table is, when Apostle Paul says that he's the apostle of the Gentiles, are these Gentiles true Gentiles in the essence of the word, meaning they are non-Israelites? Or are these Gentiles actually Hebrew Israelites who have decided to live their lives outside of Torah law? So we're going to spend some time and see if the prophets can shed some light on whether Apostle Paul was the apostle to Gentiles, real Gentiles, meaning non-Israelites, or were those Gentiles actually Hebrew Israelites who had forsaken the Holy Covenant. But before we dig into the prophets, we have to spend a little bit of time uncovering some forgotten history. So the first thing we're going to do, by the help of the Most High, we're going to start with Paul's introduction to his letters to the Romans. And we're going to see if we can make some sense of Paul's letter to the Romans. So if you have your Bibles, grab your Bibles and you can turn to Romans chapter 1. And we're going to break down, if we can, we're going to break down Paul's introduction for his letters to the Romans. So if you go to Romans 1, and we can start at verse 7. We're going to start at Romans 1 and 7 and see if we can shed some light on Paul's audience. So Paul says, "To all that be in Rome, beloved of Yah, called to be saints, grace to you and peace from our Elohim, our Abba, and the Hamashiach Yahusha." So Paul lets his introduction be known who he's addressing this letter of Romans to. There's two requirements that you have to meet for this letter to be written to you. He says, "To all that be at Rome." Notice he did not say "my fellow Romans" or "my dear Romans," or he didn't say "to all Romans." He said "to all that be at Rome." And then he lists two requirements to let it be known he's writing to a specific group. The first requirement, he says, he says, those beloved of Yah. So the first part I want to spend some time with, Paul says, to those beloved of God or Yah. So it's faster and easier to address those who are not beloved of God, because Paul is only writing to one group, and this group has to be beloved of God. And then the second part, he says they have to be called to be saints. Called to be saints. So our two criteria here is those beloved of God and those called to be saints. So contrary to popular or pop culture, every human being, every nation under the sun is not beloved of God. Contrary to popular religious doctrine, God does not love everybody. You have to remember, beloved, we cannot twist these scriptures to fit our lives. We must twist, unravel, flip over our lives to match these scriptures. Let me say it again. We cannot, under any circumstances, twist these scriptures to fit our lives, to fit what's comfortable for us. We must twist our lives, undo our lives, and make sure our lives match these scriptures. So Paul says he's writing his letter to those beloved of God and those called to be saints. So let's address the first caveat here. Those beloved of God. So for us to unravel those beloved of God, we have to go over some untold history. Many people are not aware that ancient Rome is actually the land called Kittim. Ancient Rome is actually the land called Kittim. Some modern translations spell it Kittim. Some archaic spellings spell it Chettim. But Rome, before it had its name changed, is known in the Hebrew as the land of Kittim. So with that piece of information, we're going to start putting the puzzle together. So if you turn to the book of Jasher, I'm going to read from the book of Jasher. If you're not familiar with the book of Jasher here, it's mentioned 3 times in your King James that you probably have. If you turn to 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 18, and then if you go to Joshua chapter 10 and verse 13, and then again in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and 8, it mentions the book of Jasher. One of the most famous stories is when, I believe, Joshua prayed to the Most High that he would keep the sun up in the sky until he was done slaying the enemy. And the Most High listened to Joshua, and the sun stayed up in the sky extra long that day until Joshua and the Israelites finished slaying their enemies. So if you haven't heard of the book of Jasher, you can Google it. It's online. But we're going to read from Jasher chapter 10 and verse 16. We're going to read from Jasher chapter 10 verse 16. And the heading of this chapter is the descendants of Noah. So it says this. Chapter 10 verse 16. And the children of Kittim are the Roman, who dwell in the valley of Canaanite by the river Tibru. So I'll read it again. This is Jasher chapter 10 verse 16. And the children of Kittim are the Roman, who dwell in the valley of Canaanite by the river Tibru. So if you Google the ancient river of Timber, now it's called Timber, Tiber. There's a river that flows through Rome, Italy, called Timber. So Jasher is saying that those people who dwell in the valley where this river Timber runs, They are known as Kittim or Romans. Romans and Kittim are the same people. And this is when the nations were divided after the Tower of Babel. Guys who know the history, the Tower of Babel, the Most High scattered the people and confused their languages. So this is marking where these people went. So the Kittim by the river of Timber are known as Romans. Kittim and Romans are the same people. So now let's flip over to Jasher chapter, I want Jasher 61 and 25. I'm going to read from Jasher chapter 61, verse 25. And the subheading here is Zepho unites Italy. Zepho unites Italy. So this is Jasher chapter 61, verse 25. And it reads like this. Well, you know what? Let me give you the introduction to the chapter. It says, so the patriarchs are dying. Zebulon just died. Now Simeon has died. You know, two of the patriarchs. So this is Jasher 61 and verse 5. And Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, captain of the host, to Angeas, king of Dihabah, was still daily enticing Angeas to prepare for battle to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. And Angeas was unwilling to do this thing, for his servants had related to him all the might of the sons of Jacob, what they had done unto them in the battle with their children of Esau. So Zepho is the grandson of Esau. And Zepho has one favor with this king, this African king. He's trying to entice this African king, Angeas, to go back to Egypt and destroy the Israelites. And this king, Angeas, is saying, no way possible. We've heard what the sons of Israel have done to the children of Esau. We're not bothering the children of Israel. But Zepho, you're going to see Zepho persisted. So now we're going to drop down to chapter 61, verse 25. This is Jasher chapter 61, verse 25. It says, and the subtitle here is, Zepho becomes first Roman king. Zepho becomes first Roman king. And verse 25 reads like this. You know what? I'm going to start at verse 24. This is 61, verse 24 and 25. So it says, and the children of Kittim saw the valor of Zepho, and the children of Kittim resolved, and they made Zepho king over them. And he became king over them, and while he reigned, they went to subdue the children of Tubal and all the surrounding islands. Verse 25. And their king Zepho went at their head, and they made war with Tubal and the islands, and they subdued them. And when they returned from the battle, they renewed his government for him. And they built for him a very large palace for his royal habitation and seat. And they made a large throne for him. And Zepho reigned over the whole land of Kittim and over the land of Italia 50 years. I'll read it again. And Zepho reigned over the whole land of Kittim and over the whole land of Italia 50 years. Zepho is the first king of Italy, or the first Roman king. Now, with that piece of information, you know that any king, his successor has to be in his bloodline. So all the first generations of kings of Rome were the descendants of Zepho. Who is Zepho? Zepho is Esau's Zepho is Esau's grandson. Who is Esau? Esau is the twin brother of Jacob. Esau, the Most High says, I have hated. And if you go back to Romans 9 and read that chapter in full, Paul says it again. For Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. So the Most High hates Esau, which will include the sons of Esau. So now, when we go back to Paul's introduction to his letters to Romans, where he says, to all that be at Rome, beloved of Yah. Well, he can't be talking to the Romans, i.e. the Italians, because they are descendants of Zepho, which are descendants of Esau, and that's the bloodline that the Most High hates. So Paul cannot be writing to the descendants of Esau. So that's our first clue. Paul is not writing his letters to the Romans or any of his other letters to Gentiles. He's writing to a specific group of people. So right now, we're going to address the second part of Paul's introduction. So we just showed you that those beloved of God can't be the descendants of Esau who founded or who built up Rome. He can't be writing to Esau descendants because Paul knows our history. He knows Torah frontwards and backwards, and he wouldn't be writing to the descendants of Esau. So the second part of Paul's introduction, he says, and those called to be saints. Now, contrary to popular Christian doctrine, everybody under the sun is not called to be saints. The word saints come from the Hebrew word meaning Kodesh or Kadosh. Some people say Kadosh or Kodesh. But the word saints comes from the Hebrew word Kadosh. Kadosh just means set apart. Set apart or holy. You are set apart from others. You are holy, set apart for the Most High. How do we set ourselves apart from others? We set ourselves apart by following the instructions or the Torah of the Most High. And to get some understanding, to make sure we're not in error, we're going to validate this with the writings of King David. So if you turn your books to Psalms 50, we're going to get some understanding of those who are saints. I'm going to read from Psalms chapter 50, and I'm going to start at verse 5. This is Psalms chapter 50, verse 5. And it says, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. Again, let me read this again. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. So right here, this makes it be known that Paul knows he's not writing to anybody in Rome who has, so-called repented and taken on Christianity or loose Hebrew customs. Paul lets it be known he's writing to his scattered Israelite brothers who are now living in Rome, because he says those are the ones beloved of God and those are called to be saints, because the Israelites are the only nation in world history that has ever made a covenant with the Most High. The Israelites are the only ones in history who have ever made a covenant with the Most High. So right then we know the subject of Paul's letters to the Romans, as well as all his other letters, are to scattered Israelites. So with that information, now we need to show, well, how did these Israelites get in Rome? Well, let me read a little excerpt from Wikipedia. So I gave you some history from the book of Jasher, and you can Google Wikipedia and just Google Hebrews, ancient Hebrews in Rome. Now, I will admit Wikipedia is not always accurate. You do have to fact check everybody. Fact check Wikipedia, Google, fact check everybody. But for the most part, I found Wikipedia to be fairly accurate. So I gave you some ancient history from the book of Jasher. Let's see what Wikipedia has in their database. It says, and this is the account of Yasapan or Joseph. It says, the medieval rabbinic compilation, Yosapan, contains a detailed account of the Kiddim. As the peoples were spread out, referring to the Tower of Babel, it says, The Kittim camped in Campania and built a city called Posamanga, while descendants of Tubal camped in neighboring Tuscany and built Sabino, with the Tiber River as their frontier. So you had two groups of people building their camps around the river Tiber or Tiber. It says, however, they soon went to war following the rape of the Sabines by the Kittim, who are correlated to the Romans. I'll read that again. However, they soon went to war. Who? These two groups called Kittim and the Tuscany. He says, following the rape of the Sabines by Kittim, who are correlated to the Romans. So again, Wikipedia in their database confirms that the Kittim and the Romans are the same people. I showed you in the book of Jasher that the Kittims and the Romans are actually descendants of Esau through his grandson Zepho. Now watch what Wikipedia says. This war was ended when the Kittim showed the descendants of Tubal their mutual progeny. So they said these two groups, the war ended when one of them says, hey, we are related, we are brothers. So these two groups stopped fighting once they realized we're the same people. Case in point, when the Negroes realized that the Puerto Ricans and the Native Americans are all Israelites, we'll stop putting each other down. Because when this country was being built, you had Negroes trying to gain their freedom by killing Native Americans for the English. And we're all the same family. That's my tangent. Let's get back to the history here. So it says, they then built cities called Porto, Albano, and Arasha. Later, their territory is occupied by Angenea, king of Carthage. So Wikipedia calls the African king Angeneus, and Jasher calls him Angeus, but it's the African king. He's the king of Carthage, right? It says, but check this out. So their territory is occupied by this African king named Angeus, but Kittim ends up appointing Zepho, son of Eliphaz and grandson of Esau, as their king. Again, Wikipedia is agreeing with the book of Jasher. It says, but Kittim ends up appointing Zepho, the son of Eliphaz and grandson of Esau, as their king, with the title Janus Saturnus, the first king of Rome. Romulus is made in this account to be a distant successor of this line. And also Wikipedia notes a shorter, more garbled version of this story is also found in the later Sefer HaYashar. He says a shorter, more garbled version of this story is also found in Sefer HaYashar, the book or report of Jasher or Yashar, which means the upright in Hebrew. So Wikipedia is agreeing with the book of Jasher that this land that we call Rome today, Italy, it was once ruled by an African king, the African king of Carthage, who later gets in bed with Zepho. Zepho somehow becomes king of Rome. Zepho is the grandson of Esau. So we have academic history confirming the book of Jasher that Rome was ruled, and their first kings came from the line of Esau. Esau is the line that the Most High hates. Therefore, Paul can't be writing to Esau descendants when he said those beloved of God. So the second part, we said, you know, the saints, called to be saints. We showed you that in Romans 50, verse 5. So we know Paul is not writing to Esau descendants. He's not writing to Italians. He's writing to scattered Israelites. So how did the Israelites get in Rome? Well, to understand how the Israelites got in Rome, you have to read the book of To understand how the Israelites got in Rome, you have to read the book of Maccabees. Maccabees tells that Greek captivity. Right now, your current version of the Bible probably is missing the Apocrypha. Well, the Apocrypha pretty much lays out that kingdom known as the Greeks. When they came over, they conquered Israel. They were doing horrible things to the Israelites. And many of the Israelites, to escape death, ran into Rome because we had a military pact with Rome. The Israelites had a military pact with Rome at the time that we would defend and fight for one another. So that's why our ancestors ran into Rome. And now that's why Paul is writing to those Israelites who are living in Rome. So now with all this history, we finally can get into the 10 minutes with the prophets. I know it's a lot, but when a lot of lies and false doctrine has been spread, we have to take the time to get some true understanding. So now we're going to get some further understanding of who Paul is writing to in his letters to the Romans. So if you go to Romans 9, and we're going to start at verse 20. I start at verse 24, I believe. So I'm going to start reading from Romans 9, verse 24, and we're going to verify that Paul knows he's writing to Hebrew Israelites and he's not writing to Italians in the Roman Empire. So this is Romans 9, this is Romans 9, verse 24. It says, even us whom he has called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. Again, that word Gentile. But who were these Gentiles? Verse 25. As he says in Hosea, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not my beloved. Verse 26. And it shall come to pass that in that place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall they be called the children of the living Yah. So Paul says he has called not only us Jews, the tribe of Judah, but also you Gentiles. But these Gentiles have to match what's written in the book of Hosea. So let's turn to the book of Hosea, the prophet, and wrap this up and verify that Paul knew he was writing to scattered Israelites and he's not writing to the descendants of Esau or any strange nation. So we're going to read from Hosea chapter 1. So we're going to read from Hosea chapter 1 and we're going to match it up to what Paul wrote in Romans 9 about those people called not beloved and those people called not my people. So this is Hosea chapter 1 and we're going to start it at verse 5. Hosea 1 and 5. It says, and it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Verse 6. And she conceived again and bare a daughter. And the Most High said unto him, call her name Lo Ruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Verse 7. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah and will save them by the Most High their Elohim. And I will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. Verse 8. Now when she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Verse 9. Then said the Most High, call his name Lo-Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your Elohim. Verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass, that in the place where it was set unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living Elohim. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head. This again is confirmation that the Apostle Paul is writing his letters to the children of Israel scattered abroad and not to Gentile nations, meaning non-Hebrew Israelites. With that, I want to close this. Thank you for your attention. I want to encourage all of you, all of the 12 tribes scattered across this globe. These are the last days. Take this word, take this book we call the Bible is our history book. Take this book and spend some time alone with the prophets. Repent for all the wickedness that we've done, our forefathers done, and return to the commandments and statutes and judgments of the Most High Yah. He has granted us some mercy and some peace through the blood of Yeshua, our Hamashiach. Do not take this mercy for granted. Time is running short. I beseech you all, please repent and come back to your book. Come back to the Most High's instructions we call Torah. And with that, I say shalom, shalom. Kwam Yasha'Allah, rise Israel. Shalom.
And what is his image? His image is all evil, right? And evil is everything anti-law, ain't it? The unjust, the liars, the thieves, the murderers, all this y'all out here doing to your enemies, right? The envious, the slanderers, the blasphemers, all these things y'all doing back and forth to people to get even, right? Do you see this iron? Do you see this iron? All that negativity you switching back and forth when you debating with a brother and you wishing bad on him and you hating him in your heart and you're saying words that you think is gonna hurt him, not caring whether or not what you saying is totally true or not. You know